5. JavaScript events, add listeners with JS. So let's run our code. And what do we have here? So it says here that body on load, there's an event listener for that. It loads my load function. So let's just alert something when that happens. Alert body loaded. All right. And that's what's going to pop up when it loads. So if when I run it, it's going to say body loaded, and then it's going to print everything on the screen. It's going to show everything on the screen. So then I have a button. Its ID is called the green. Its background, its color is green. The text is white. It says I am a green button. And yeah, for some reason, when I click on it, nothing happens. Okay, so what does it ask me to do? Sometimes we need to add event listeners during runtime. So let's say sometimes, you don't want to give it, an active listener for this button. So you don't want it to click. You don't want it to give it any behavior until after something happens. So how do we do that? So right now this code is listening to the load, and it prompts the alert when this website finishes loading. And we did that. Please add the needed code inside myLoad function to get the green button by ID and assign it to a variable. Use that variable to start listening to the user clicks on the green button. Create a new function to assign a listener to that click. Alert Wuju inside that function. So what that means is, see how all we have to do is say on click, and then just add the function in there? Well, we don't want to add that till some event happens. Well, in this case, let's just pretend that we just don't want it to load. We don't want to get to give that functionality until the onload function works. So we're going to put it here. Now, how do we do that? Oh, I thought I changed this. So add event listener. Don't use this link. I thought I changed it. Sorry, this link is broken. We're going to just add event listener, www3schools. I don't know why I call it www3schools. And this is basically how you do it. You grab the element by ID, and you add an event listener. And the event you want to give it is that, and then you throw the function in there. So let's look at how we're going to do that here. How are you going to implement it here? Well, here it creates a function. This is a JavaScript way of creating a function. But we're going to call our function by our name, and it's already defined in our JS file, my Wuju function. So we're going to say document.get element by ID, and I believe it was called the green, capital G. Yes, we're going to grab that by ID. And what are we going to do with it? We are going to say .add event listener. In fact, add event listener. And the event we're going to listen to is our first parameter, click. And the next thing we're going to do, we're going to say my Wuju function. I don't know if I have to do this. Let's try it both ways. Okay, so let's try it. Let's run our code. What's our console saying? There's an X there. So it's saying add event listener. Run that code. There we go. Body's loaded. Let's see our results. Click our green button. And it says it calls my Wuju function, which is Wuju. So let's run that code again and notice that, there's no way to demonstrate that it doesn't have that event until I press that button. So let's run that code again. It doesn't load. Well, I guess I could fix this. Another thing you could do is you could, once you click Wuju, I'll let it alert. So let's say this document. Let's try something out. I'm going to try something out where if I hover on it, it'll alert some next function called hover, or an alert a hover. So get element by ID, and then the green dot add event listener, and we're gonna say the event we're gonna listen to is hover, and we're gonna say we're gonna call it the function hover hover. And of course now we have to define our function hover hover, and all it does is alert. It says hovers, or hover hover. Why not? Okay, so let's run our code. Now our body is loaded. Do you notice that when I hover on top, nothing happens? And I'm taking a risk here. 6 minutes of video recording. Hopefully this works. Now when I click the button, after I click it, it's going to, the event listener for click has already added my Wuju. But my Wuju, once it runs, it's going to alert my Wuju, and when I hover on top of it, after that, it's going to add event listener so that when I hover, it'll say hover hover. You notice that there's no thing saying hover hover now when I hover over the green button. So, well, let's run it, the code. Body loaded. I'll click here. I hover, nothing happens. But when I click on it, it says Wuju. Now when I hover, it should say hover hover. Oh, I guess you can't add an event listener for hover. Well, that's just perfect. Well, that's just perfect. Maybe I'll edit the code. I'll just leave it as it is. Just delete this. Maybe in the next video I'll explain why it didn't work. But anyway, this is how you do it. Submit.